Hi, welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Karen Barnes, and I'm an accountability coach here at Action Coach of Central North Carolina. My guest today is Carl Bjorke. He is the founder of Compliancy.com, a really interesting B2B tech company. And he's going to share with us today his journey to business ownership, which, like a lot of founders, is really not a straight line, some challenges that he's run into, some lessons that he learned, and we're going to get a little sneak peek into what it's really like to run a tech company, a software as a service tech business. So let me take care of a little housekeeping first. If this is your first time on the channel, hit all the buttons. I want to see some likes. I want to see some shares. I want to see some subscribes from you guys, just so you can make, oh, yes, boom. Just so you can get all the wisdom and make sure you don't miss any episodes and conversations that we're sharing. All right, Carl, you ready to roll?
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. Why don't we just start? Give us an overview of what is Compliancy.com? What do you do? Who are you serving? What is this thing?
Sure. So I think the number one thing that really got me excited about compliance, and I assure you it's a very strange thing to be excited about considering how dry the content is most of the time. I really had an epiphany, which boils down to the following. We want to empower small and medium-sized business to compete with their enterprise counterparts. And a big part of competing in today's marketplace is being able to prove all the things that you say you are. And pretty generically, that is compliance in a nutshell. And so we have come up with a product and a model that allows companies with less resources, both in terms of expertise and the people and the software that's required to manage compliance effectively. We bundle those things together as an offering to small and medium business size customers so that they can have access to the same suite of expertise and tools that their enterprise counterparts do, so they compete for all the business that's available out there.
Nice. So help me understand, like, what types of areas of compliance are you really working on here?
Yeah, great question. So every organization, whether they know it or not, has an awful lot of rules and regulations and standards that they need to adhere to. And so I think one that most people are familiar with is if we've ever been to a doctor's office or a hospital, there's a thing called HIPAA, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what all these acronyms stand for. Functionally, what's important is that those organizations have to adhere to a certain set of standards. And that is one standard that a certain type of company needs to adhere to. There are others that are industry specific, right? Within finance, within manufacturing. And then there are some others that are kind of more general in nature. And when I think of compliance, what's really important isn't that you are necessarily saying, yes, I am adherent to this, framework of some kind. What's important about it is having a tool that provides the business intelligence to owners so that they can make the right decisions about, does compliance make sense? And I'll give you a very quick example. Uh, Almost every company on the planet uh, manages some type of payment system,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a
Mm-hmm.
standard that manages that, PCI.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences for not being compliant with that, frankly, are not very big. It costs a little bit extra per transaction, right? But where that becomes valuable from a business intelligence perspective is if your company has a client that is, they're billing $100,000 a month, and you're
Mm-hmm.
paying a little bit extra because you're not PCI compliant in terms of payments you're processing for some of your vendors and customers. That's not a big deal, but that very quickly becomes a big deal when your single largest customer says to you, we now have a set of requirements that we have to meet. And one of those is we need to ensure that all of the companies that we work with are being held to this standard. Are you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very scary to say no. But if you can show a path to yes, you can certainly buy yourself some time. But the other part of that is knowing these standards and frameworks that your business is realistically going to be held to by someone at one point. By having an operational system to manage towards them, you always know where you stand so you can make the right business decision. Every business has limited time, limited resources, limited people. And so we're really just trying to provide a platform that gives them the information around compliance so that those companies can make the right decisions about what makes sense for us from a compliance perspective.
That's a great example, Carl, and I'm glad that you gave us a really concrete example there. I think maybe a lot of people don't look at compliance as a risk, and that example is it just kind of made me look at it in a completely different way. So,
Yeah,
you
and
said, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, one of the things that when we look back on the last couple of years and how businesses instantly had to adapt, right? We think very often of supply chains. We were all impacted by whatever expensive groceries and
Mm-hmm.
long wait times for Peloton bikes and everything else. Um, and one of the things that came out of that was that a lot of business has been done in the same way that it's always been done because that's the way that it's been done, right? It's kind of like the old adage about why do you cut the ends off the roast? And so, well, that's the way my grandmother did it. My mother did it. And then it turns out the reason they did it that way is because the original roast didn't fit in the oven. So the ends were cut off, right?
Didn't know that.
Uh, yeah. And so just doing it the way that we've always been doing it worked fine. And then we had this catalyst for change, which really made a lot of organizations realize that we need to ensure that the companies that we work with are meeting the same types of standards that we are because we cannot deliver our product if they cannot deliver to us. And so that's really a big part of the value of these standards and frameworks is having a common system to measure your potential suppliers, vendors, and customers along so that you can continue to deliver the great service that you want.
I love that, Carl. So, speaking of being a disruptor, and catalyst for change, how would you say that your company is unique in the marketplace?
So unique is a scary term, right? I think one of the things that happens very often in technology is we get so focused on the shiny object, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not discounting the value of AI. I think it's very important, but there are challenges with every technology. And so when we rely on technology to alone to solve a problem, very rarely do we get a good solution or a good answer. And so one of the things that's really fundamentally different in our approach is that yes, we have a technology, and that technology allows multiple parties to manage the pieces and parts of compliance that are important to them. But we also have the ability to add a human in the loop, for lack of a better term, where if you think of a piece of software that is responsible for aggregating information, very often, once a piece of information has been added as a task, it's complete, right? We get a green check mark. The part that should scare people about that green check mark is we know something has been added, but do we know if it's appropriate or correct?
Mm.
And the short answer is, in most cases, we don't. And so our ability to add people in that service process, for lack of a better term, ensures that not only do we know the tasks are being completed related to the controls or frameworks that someone wants to manage, we know that it's accurate and appropriate. And you can almost think of it as it's the equivalent of adding a copy of your receipt to your expense report, right? Every accounting department on the planet asks you for specific details so that they can categorize it correctly.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so again, we have the ability to have people look at the things that are being collected, gathered, and attached to ensure that that is in fact putting your organization in a position where the results that you're seeing are accurate, because there's nothing scarier than a false positive, actually.
Mm-hmm. That's another great example. So you mentioned that your audience is small and medium-sized businesses, right? So I'm just going to
Yep.
shift gears here a little bit. So what are some of the marketing strategies toward those small and medium-sized businesses that have worked for you or not worked for you? What are some of the marketing lessons you've learned across the years?
Great question. So our end user target is a small and medium sized business. Our go to market model is a little bit more complicated than that. We distribute and sell our platform and our expertise through third parties. And these third parties are technology companies that are managing technology on behalf of their end users. So when you think of most small businesses in the United States, they don't necessarily have the $600,000 a year in payroll to have all of the technology experts that's required to run a business. And so they will partner with a company traditionally referred to as a managed service provider, right? They're a third party
Mm-hmm.
IT outsourcing. So one of the toughest decisions we made actually was to have that be our distribution channel.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge in that is whenever you are relying on someone else to quote unquote sell your product, you get tremendous breadth, but you lose a lot of control in that deal flow. But the real advantage to us and for those end users is that a lot of compliance is technology driven. These third parties are already managing that technology. And so for us, they're really an ideal vehicle to start this compliance process because those third parties can do the things that are relevant from them, just in terms of the strict technology portions of compliance. The other parts of compliance, which are not directly technology related, which frankly are more appropriate for those end users to manage, it's still being done through the same platform. One tremendous advantage of that is that we end up being very, very cost effective because we're amortizing our tool and our resources basically over these third parties, which are managing, dozens and dozens of end user clients. And so our model really is to not call on the end users directly. We call on these third party IT providers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're small businesses too, right? They always want
Sure.
to add services, they want to increase their margins, they want to decrease their churn, and we're a tool that allows them to do that. And it works
Nice.
very well within I'll call it a land and expand strategy, right? So very often we'll get engaged with a partner because they have a very specific customer with a very specific need. But then once we're deployed there, they see the opportunity to continue deploying our solution within their account base.
I love that. I want everybody to remember that nugget, a land and expand strategy. That's something you might be able to put to work in your business right now. So, Carl, you and I aren't spring chickens. I know that you came into,
Nope.
nope, yep, we are what we are, right? So I know
Yep.
that you came into founding this business through a long history of sales. So as you look back on your journey, what's been one of those really tough challenges that just kind of socked you in the stomach, and how did you get around that, and what lessons did you take from that experience?
Well, so not to sound too philosophical, right? But one of the things that um, I really believe in my heart of hearts is that it is better to know and fail than to not try and doubt.
Mm,
And so part of the reason for frankly being so excited about compliancy in general is that it is a tremendous opportunity in a blue ocean market. When I say blue ocean, all I mean is in most cases we're not competing against another technology that's already installed. We're
mm-hmm.
competing against a process which in a lot of cases isn't very sophisticated. That's not driving the results that somebody wants. But the gut punch always is having been in sales my entire life. Uh, you have to get comfortable with rejection. Everybody tells you that, but I would actually say the thing that you have to be far more comfortable with than the actual rejection is pursuing a deal far enough and asking the right tough questions. And I'll give you an example. I'm sure you get 100 cold calls a week, just like I do, right? We have been taught our entire lives that when somebody says, no, I'm not interested, well, we all have good manners, right? So we say, well, I'm sorry I interrupted, right? But the nature of it is, if I call someone, and I have a lot of responsibilities, but I've always loved my life in sales. Sales is a perishable skill. And so I want to keep that axe nice and sharp. And so I make sales calls. And one of the core things you just have to get comfortable with is when somebody says, well, I'm not interested. Well, you've spoken to them for 3 seconds, you interrupted them. You need to have a counter to that because, of course, they're not interested. How could they be interested? I barely even said my name. And so, if you're doing any type of phone work, it's just building up that comfort level and approach to be able to push back in a respectful manner.
So give me an example, Carl, because I want to learn from that. I'm going to have a personal teaching moment right now with Carl. What is the
Sure.
best strategy that you have seen to overcome that objection? Because I'm sure we all get it 10 out of 10
Yeah,
times.
consistency. Anybody can do anything once. That's not the challenge. When you're thinking about picking up the phone to talk to someone, we all have other things that need to get done. Every once in a while, we want someone to say no. Okay. But we got to push through that. We have to have a system that allows us to manage our sales behavior and consider our life a success, even if everybody says no. That's number one. But again, the other part is, you know, many salespeople are looking for a reason to have their customer continue the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are other approaches which are more effective. I think what you really need to try and do is qualify that conversation so hard, so early on in the process, so that you're not begging them to take time with you. You've created
Yeah.
enough of a nugget of interest that they want to continue the conversation with you.
Nice. Nice.
And so
Carl.
for me, it's, three soft pushbacks is what I would say on just a totally ice cold call.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hey, I'm not interested. Okay, I totally understand. I wouldn't be interested either. I haven't given you my name. The timing is bad. I totally understand that too. I've never had good timing on anything in my life. I would just love to get 3 minutes with you at a time that's convenient, whether that's now or later. Which do you prefer? Right. That's
Nice.
three respectful pushbacks to try and get that call. And ultimately, as salespeople, very often when we start off in our sales careers, we're so focused on booking the deal that we
Mm-hmm.
forget that what we really want to do are book great deals that allow us to build our business and not take terrible deals because the deal seemed good, but we didn't want to qualify it enough to because now we have too much time invested in it when frankly we should have lost it a long time ago.
That is gold. Y'all, go back and listen to that again. That is sales freaking gold. Carl, I'm so glad we are having this conversation today. Let's shift gears a little bit. I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you some rapid fire questions. It's going to be a little bit like a game show, right? And then you're just going to give me short, quick answers. Ready? You're the next
Go.
contestant on rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
Carl Bjorke, what is the key to success for you?
Discipline.
What a great answer. So many of us lack it, and you can't have what you want unless you do what you need to do.
That's
What
correct. Everybody knows what they need to do. Very few people do it. Sorry. Back to the rapid fire.
Totally, I'm there. What is your one piece of advice for other business owners?
Do it. I think they've overcome the hardest part by starting their own business, frankly. Like I said
Absolutely.
earlier, I would rather try something and fail and know than to not try and doubt for the rest of my life.
Love it. What is the one book or podcast or something that you're involved with or learning now that you want to share with the rest of the world?
So I would say never pick one. There are so many different theories and approaches to everything. The one piece of advice that I actually would give is get information from a variety of sources and create your own approach and tactics.
Love it. So this is my favorite question. So imagine that you had a little bowl of magic pixie dust and it would fix anything just magically. So where on your business would you sprinkle your magic pixie dust?
I would sprinkle it on end user knowledge. And what I mean by that, and I know this is the rapid fire phase and this is a longer answer
It's all
than
right.
that.
Expand away.
Sure. So ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Mm,
There are absolute pros from a winning business perspective that organizations can leverage by being compliant with the things that their customers want them to be. But step one, and this is the challenge of creating, for lack of a better term, or being part of a new market, is your end user customers aren't necessarily educated to the fact that A, they have a problem to solve, and B, how do they solve it?
hmm
And so our business is accelerating rapidly because there are now a number of competitors in our space that frankly are very well funded by Silicon Valley venture capital,
Mm-hmm.
and a rising tide lifts all boats. And so it's really been great for us because we're still happy to educate anybody that needs to be or wants to be educated on it.
Sure.
But the type of calls that we're making now, there's an understanding and a lot of people that we talk to already that yes, this is something that I need to be considering. Yes, this is a problem that my business has, and that's really allowed us to shorten our sales cycles pretty tremendously.
Nice. So what is most inspiring to you right now?
In what way?
Personally, professionally, what's kind of like making you go, whoa?
So inspiration is different um, to everybody. I think part of the question really becomes what drives us? Why do we do the things that we do, and how do we want to improve? And I think for me, when I think of inspiration, it's really looking back to the lives that our parents managed to create for us. And
Hmm.
um, everybody works hard. And it is inspirational to me when people define their own success and are not boxed in by what others tell them success should be. Um, I love running a software company, but there are lots of other things that we should never lose sight of, and that is who we are as people. And I take great pride that when I network with people, I meet new people. What they do for work is very seldom one of the top 5 questions that I ask them. I want to get to know people first and foremost. And so I guess that's a long way of saying I'm inspired by the right people.
I love that answer. I love that answer. All right, last, if people want to find you, where can they go? Website, socials?
Yeah, so we are on the web, obviously, at compliancy.com, just compliance spelled with a Y. Uh, well, obviously, we have a LinkedIn presence as well. But I think one of the best places to start is if you're interested in just learning more about compliance in general, people can feel free to look me up individually on LinkedIn. I post content on a pretty regular basis and try to add value where I can. Um, and so, yeah, I would say LinkedIn. Just my LinkedIn is just C Bjerke, CBJERKE, after the LinkedIn URL, and compliancy is our web domain.
Awesome. I will get that up on the screen for everybody. So, Carl, thank you for
Can
just
I say one final thing, Karen? Just
of course,
I hate to
yes.
interrupt. Since I am so old school, I I recognize that a lot of people do not answer their phones because of spam.
Hmm.
Okay. There's been a lot of money put into spam filters, I assure you, for your phone. We do take great pride in the fact that we answer our phone, and we do that for a very simple reason. If I get a spam phone call, that is 10 seconds of my life that I have wasted, but 10 seconds is not a lot. If you don't pick up a phone call that is ringing you, how can you possibly know if that is a call you should take or not? I think one of the biggest mistakes, and this is a strong opinion, but at least I recognize it's a strong opinion, is they're way too gated in how their customers or prospects are supposed to reach them. If there was one
Hmm.
thing that I would say to everybody, answer your phone. That's it. If it's a bum call, it's a bum call. I personally have spent hours of my life in parking lots waiting for meetings to start. Okay. Wasting 15 seconds on a phone call is not a big deal. And and that really is important because when we think at all of the technology vendors out there, nobody knows their technology better than they do. And a lot of them can have a very positive impact on your business if you allow them to. And step one is answering that phone call and maybe learning something about it. So
Oh
I'm going
my
to give you my
gosh.
number, and people can
Let's
feel free
do
to
it.
call
Let's do it. What's your number,
603.
Carl? 603?
It's 60. Yep. 233
Mm-hmm.
0213. And we're located right here in North Carolina. And but that's my direct number.
Your phone's going to ring, Carl, and then you're going to pick it up, and hopefully some great conversations will ensue. Well,
Correct. But
this
even if they do not, it is time well spent. And that's my
time well
point.
spent together because people, connections, All right, people,
Yep.
thank you for tuning in today. Carl, thank you for dropping some
Thank you.
serious wisdom bombs on us today.